Greetings everyone, my name is Gigi and this is Let's Build, wherein I build a Lego set timed to different media and talk about the facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is the Lego Disney Young Simba from The Lion King versus Disney's The Lion King for the Sega Genesis. The footage I am using from this game is for science, educational, and research purposes. My content is transformative and protected under fair use. All footage is time-lapse with commentary. I apologize in advance for pronouncing names and or places incorrectly. Spoilers ahead for The Lion King. You have been warned. Specifications of the Lego set. Share a passion for iconic movies with this young Simba, The Lion King Lego Disney Animal Building Set. This building kit for adults celebrates The Lion King's 30th anniversary and features a Simba animal figure with a movable head so the model can be displayed in different poses. This relaxing activity for adults is a fun, nostalgic gift that employs advanced building techniques and fosters a sense of creative joy as you click the last piece into place and set Simba up on display. This premium Lego building set for adults is a distinctive display or themed gift idea for adult fans of The Lion King and can be added to other Lego Disney building sets in the series or built alongside the Simba The Lion King Cub buildable companion sets. All other sets are sold separately to extend the creative joy. You can enjoy an intuitive building experience with the Lego Builder app, which lets you zoom in and rotate the model in 3D, track progress, and save your sets in one place. Lego Disney Building Set for Adults. Treat yourself or any other adult fan of The Lion King to a young Simba the Lion King animal figure building set to spark nostalgia and creative pride. Celebrate a milestone. This building set for adults features a Simba animal figure in a classic pose with a movable head to celebrate the Lion King's 30th anniversary. Creative building. This Simba Lego Disney animal figure with a movable head can be built alongside the Simba the Lion King Cub buildable companion set with a younger builder. Spark joy. This collectible Lego construction set lets adult fans enjoy a relaxing activity with a challenging build that lets you create a fun home decor display piece. Disney gift for adults. This Simba animal figure with a movable head makes a nostalgic display gift for movie lovers or a treat for you or any other adult Disney fan. Dimensions. This 1,445-piece Lego construction set for adults includes a buildable lion animal figure that stands over 11.5 inches tall when on display. A new king. I had the unique opportunity to develop not just this, but 2 Lego Simba models at the same time. Inspired by one of the most beloved classic Disney characters, this playful display model takes advantage of the diverse shapes and combinations Lego bricks can offer in a fun and intuitive building experience. Its lively, posable companion model is designed for kids ages 6 and up to build on their own. Whether you build this model by yourself or with one of your real-life cubs, we hope you will embrace your favorite Lion King movie. Marcos Besa, Lego designer. The Great Circle of Life. Curious and eager to learn about the world, Simba lives for the daring adventures as well as the reflective moments he shares with his loving and adoring father. A devoted role model and protector, Mufasa generously imparts his wisdom to the young cub and shows him how to care for and lead their pride. This bond is only strengthened when Simba is suddenly faced with the loss of his father and embarks on his own journey, continuing the great circle of life. Born as the future king of Pride Rock, Simba was anointed and presented to the animals of the Pride Lands. His birth enraged his uncle Scar, who envied and resented him for replacing him as the next in line to the throne. Growing up, Simba was taught by his father Mufasa to respect the circle of life, and thus maintain balance between predator and prey. While Simba was still a cub, Scar used a wildebeest stampede to put him in harm's way and thus lure Mufasa into danger. Scar managed to assassinate Mufasa, after which he set his hyena minions to dispose of Simba. However, when the hyenas failed to kill Simba, the cub escaped into the desert and took refuge with a meerkat named Timon and a warthog named Pumbaa, who taught him to embrace a Hakuna Matata lifestyle. Simba was born to Mufasa, the reigning monarch of Pride Rock, and his mate Sarabi. As next in line to the throne, Simba was expected to inherit the mantle of king someday. One day, when Simba was an infant, the Pridelanders traveled to Pride Rock to witness the cub's presentation ceremony. Rafiki arrived and ascended Pride Rock, where he beheld Simba for the first time. After smiling down at the cub, Rafiki shook his gourds over Simba's head, which made the cub bat at them playfully. Rafiki then took a gourd, ripped it in half, trailed his thumb through the juice, and marked Simba's forehead. Afterward, he threw sand over the marking, and Simba sneezed. While Mufasa and Sarabi watched proudly, Rafiki took Simba into his arms and carried him to the promontory of Pride Rock. There, he lifted the cub into the air for all the animals of the Pride Lands to see. Immediately, the Pridelanders erupted into cheers and bowed before Simba. After the ceremony, Mufasa confronted his younger brother Scar for his absence at Simba's presentation. Scar claimed to have forgotten all about it and lamented how he would have been next in line to the throne until Simba's birth. Mufasa reminded Scar that Simba was the future king, but Scar merely quipped that he would practice his curtsy. Seasons passed, and Simba grew into a young cub. One morning, he rushed into the den of Pride Rock and attempted to wake up Mufasa. Sarabi told Mufasa that his son was awake, but he retorted that Simba was her son before sunrise. Despite Mufasa's unwillingness to get up, Simba persisted and reminded Mufasa that he had promised. This finally made Mufasa get up and follow Simba outside. Together, the two ascended Pride Rock until they were sitting side by side on the summit. As the sun rose over the Pride Lands, Mufasa told Simba that everything the light touches is our kingdom. He then explained to Simba that kings rose and fell, and that Simba would someday succeed Mufasa as the king of Pride Rock. Incredulous, Simba asked if the whole kingdom would be his, and Mufasa replied that it would. Simba questioned if the shadowy place was his, but Mufasa told him that it was beyond their borders. He then forbid the cub from going there. Simba asserted that a king could do whatever he wanted, but Mufasa reminded him that there was more to being king than getting one's way all the time. Mufasa led Simba into the grasslands, where he explained how predator and prey were connected in the circle of life. Though Simba pointed out that the lions ate the antelope, Mufasa illustrates how the lions become the grass when they died and so will eventually become food for the antelope. Just then, Zazu arrived and delivered his morning report to Mufasa. Simba quickly grew bored and began to chase a grasshopper. Noticing his son's game, Mufasa asked what Simba was doing, and the cub replied that he was pouncing. With a mischievous grin, Mufasa told Simba that he would show the cub how to pounce properly. With help from his father, Simba managed to pounce on Zazu and pin him to the ground. No sooner had Simba let Zazu up than the Hornbill informed Mufasa that hyenas had invaded the Pride Lands. Mufasa took off in a hurry and forbid Simba from coming with him. In a huff, the cub started back toward Pride Rock and complained that he never got to go anywhere. Zazu assured him that he could chase off those slobbering, mangy, stupid poachers himself one day. Upon returning to Pride Rock, Simba met up with his Uncle Scar and bragged about how he was going to be the king of Pride Rock one day. Scar merely commented that he would not leap for joy because he had a bad back, after which he flopped onto his side. An oblivious Simba asked Scar what he would become once Simba became king, and Scar simply replied that he would be a monkey's uncle. He then changed the subject and asked Simba if Mufasa had showed him the entire kingdom, including the rise at the northern border. This deflated Simba, who admitted that Mufasa had forbidden him from going there. Scar was quick to affirm Mufasa's decision and explained that only the bravest lions ventured into such a place. Simba insisted that he was brave and asked what was out there, but Scar refused to divulge any more information. However, he let it slip that the forbidden territory was an elephant graveyard, which excited Simba. Scar made the cub promise not to go there, then told him to run along and have fun. As Simba raced off, Scar turned away with a sinister smile. Simba hastened to his friend Nala, who was being bathed by her mother, Serafina. He told her that he wanted to go show her a really great place, but she reminded him that she was in the middle of a bath. Sarabi added that it was time for Simba's bath and proceeded to clean him with her tongue despite his struggles. After his bath, Simba told Nala that the place he wanted to visit was cool, which made Sarabi ask what exactly the place was. Simba lied that the area was around the waterhole, then added to Nala in a whisper that he would show her more once they got there. The cubs asked permission from their mothers to go, and Sarabi reluctantly granted it, though she insisted that they bring along Zazu as a babysitter. This devastated the cubs. With Zazu flying overhead, Simba and Nali journeyed to the waterhole. Along the way, Nala asked Simba where they would really be going, and he told her that they were going to visit an elephant graveyard. Though excited, she wondered how they would get rid of Zazu. Just then, Zazu flew down and told the cubs they were betrothed. In answer to their confusion, he explained that they would be getting married someday, which caused both Simba and Nala to react in disgust. A disgruntled Zazu insisted that it was a Pride Lands tradition, but Simba proclaimed that he would get rid of arranged marriages once he became king. Zazu argued that he would never let that happen, and Simba replied cheekily that Zazu was fired. The Hornbill pointed out that Simba was not the king, but Nala retorted that Simba was the future king, and Simba added that this meant Zazu had to obey him. This only made Zazu assert that Simba was shaping up to be a pathetic king. To prove Zazu wrong, Simba bragged about his future reign as king and proclaimed that he would not have to answer to anyone someday. Nala joined in, as did many other animals. In the commotion, Zazu got sat on by a rhinoceros, and Simba and Nala escaped. Once away from Zazu, Simba called himself a genius, but Nala reminded him that she had come up with the idea to get rid of the Hornbill. The two tussled playfully, during which Nala pinned Simba on his back. Simba pounced on her, and the two rolled down a steep embankment, only for Nala to pin Simba again. Just then, a geyser erupted, and the cubs realized that they had found the elephant graveyard. They started to explore the area, but Zazu appeared and urged them to go home. Despite the Hornbill's warning about the imminent danger, Simba declared that he walked on the wild side and laughed in the face of danger. He started to laugh mockingly, only for sinister laughter to echo back at him from a nearby elephant's skull. Terrified, Simba hid behind Zazu, while 3 hyenas named Shenzi, Banzai, and Ed slunk out from within the skull. Upon seeing Simba, Nala, and Zazu, the hyenas accused the trio of trespassing, and Shenzi recognized Zazu as Mufasa's majordomo. Simba identified himself as the future king, but the hyenas reminded him that he was not in his kingdom anymore. The predators started to joke about how they would eat the cubs, and Simba, Nala, and Zazu took advantage of their distraction to sneak away. Despite this trio's head start, the hyenas caught up to Zazu and captured him. Simba and Nala went back for Zazu, whom the hyenas had blasted out of a geyser, and Simba ordered them to pick on someone their own size. After Shenzi pointed out that Simba was around their size, the hyenas gave chase. Simba and Nala fled through the elephant graveyard. At one point, Nala started to slip down a hill of bones, but Simba raced to her rescue and stopped Shenzi from attacking by clawing the hyena across the face. Eventually, the hyenas cornered Simba and Nala against a rock wall. Simba attempted to shield Nala and roared at the hyenas, but they merely made fun of his piteous attempts at ferocity. Before the hyenas could harm Simba and Nala, Mufasa appeared with Zazu and wrestled the hyenas to the ground. Shenzi and Banzai insisted that they had not known of Simba's relationship to Mufasa, but Ed clarified that he had known. Infuriated, Mufasa roared and the hyenas scuttled away. Mufasa then turned his ire on Simba and reminded the cub that he had deliberately disobeyed him. Simba apologized meekly. As Mufasa led the group out of the elephant graveyard, Nala told Simba that she had thought he had been very brave. Upon entering the Pride Lands, Mufasa paused in an open field and ordered Zazu to take Nala home while he reprimanded Simba. Before leaving with Nala, Zazu wished Simba luck. As the two departed, Mufasa called Simba to him, and the cub reluctantly started walking toward his father. However, as he was walking, he stepped into one of Mufasa's massive paw prints and stared down at it in consternation. He then sat next to his father and looked up expectantly. Mufasa expressed his disappointment in Simba and reminded him that he had almost gotten himself and Nala killed. Through tears, Simba explained that he had just been trying to be brave like his father, but Mufasa reminded Simba that he was only brave when he had to be, and that being brave was no excuse for one to go looking for trouble. Simba insisted that Mufasa was not scared of anything, which prompted Mufasa to confess that he had been scared earlier that day because he thought he would lose Simba. Simba was surprised at Mufasa's revelation and realized that even kings could feel scared. He added cheekily that the hyenas had been even more scared. Laughing, Mufasa replied that no one messed with him, then began to playfully wrestle with Simba in the grass. In the midst of the game, Simba asked if he and Mufasa were friends, and Mufasa affirmed that they were. However, when Simba asked if they would always be together, Mufasa told him that the stars represented the great kings of the past, who looked down on the Pridelanders from the stars. He promised that the great kings of the past would always be there to guide Simba, as would Mufasa himself. The next morning, Scar led Simba into a gorge under the pretense that Mufasa had a surprise for him. Simba eagerly asked what the surprise was, but Scar refused to tell him. Scar started to leave so he could fetch Mufasa, and Simba bounded after him eagerly. However, Scar insisted that the cubs stay put, as he might get into trouble again like he had with the hyenas. Simba was surprised that Scar knew about the incident, and Scar stated that everyone knew what had happened. He added that Simba had been lucky to have Mufasa there to save him, and advised the cub to practice his roar. Just before Scar could leave, Simba asked his uncle if he would like the surprise, and Scar replied that it was to die for. He then strode off into the savannah, leaving Simba alone in the gorge. As Simba waited, he practiced his roar on a nearby chameleon. Eventually, he managed to roar loud enough that it scared off the chameleon and reverberated off the gorge walls. At first, he was pleased with himself, but when the ground began to shake, he looked up in concern to see that a herd of wildebeest was stampeding toward him. In fear, he fled the stampede. Before long, the animals caught up to him, and he climbed a dead tree to escape them. Just then, Zazu found Simba in the stampede and told him that Mufasa was on his way to help. He then returned to Mufasa and showed him where Simba was. After yelling a reassurance to Simba, Mufasa leapt into the stampede and fought through the running wildebeest to reach his son. At one point, a wildebeest broke Simba's tree and flung him into the air, but Mufasa jumped after the cub and caught him in his jaws. He then bore Simba to safety. Before he himself could climb out of the gorge, Mufasa was pulled back into the stampede, and Simba yelled after him fearfully. After a moment, Mufasa leapt out of the stampede and began to scale the wall of the gorge. In the meantime, Simba climbed up to the top of the gorge to meet his father. However, upon reaching the top, he witnessed Mufasa falling to his death and cried out after him in anguish. After the stampede ceased, Simba climbed to the floor of the gorge and began to search for Mufasa. Eventually, he found his father's lifeless body and attempted to revive him. However, when Mufasa remained motionless, Simba cried out for help. Before long, he gave up and began to sob. Through tears, he climbed underneath one of Mufasa's paws and laid there without moving. Just then, Scar emerged and accused Simba of having killed Mufasa. Simba insisted that it had been an accident, and Scar pretended to console him, then asked what his mother would think. Simba wondered what he should do, and Scar told him to run away and never return. With a last longing look at his father, Simba took off and raced away from the scene of the stampede. Once the cub was out of earshot, Scar ordered the hyenas to kill him, and they immediately took chase. With the hyenas in hot pursuit, Simba ran out of the gorge and fell into a thorn patch. Unwilling to pursue him into the thorns, the hyenas left him for dead and reported to Scar that they had finished the job. After escaping the hyenas, Simba wandered into the desert and collapsed from exhaustion. Just as vultures began to gather around his fallen body, Timon and Pumbaa rushed through the flock, scattering them. Pumbaa soon realized that Simba was still alive, and Timon drew closer to investigate. Upon realizing that Simba was a lion, he yelled out fearfully and ordered Pumbaa to run away. Instead of heeding Timon, Pumbaa insisted that Simba was too small to be a threat, and asked if they could keep him. Timon argued that Simba would become a dangerous predator someday, but Pumbaa reasoned that he might grow up to be on their side. Timon quickly claimed Pumbaa's idea as his own, after which he allowed Pumbaa to pick Simba in his tusks and bear the cub to safety. On the edge of the jungle, Timon and Pumbaa splashed Simba with water, which revived him. After thanking the duo for help, Simba began to wander back into the desert. A concerned Timon and Pumbaa followed him and asked him what was wrong. Simba insisted that he did not want to talk about it, and the duo surmised that he must be an outcast like them. Despite their prodding, Simba refused to divulge any more details about his past. To comfort Simba, Timon and Pumbaa taught him about their carefree Hakuna Matata lifestyle. Though at first apprehensive, Simba soon embraced their philosophy. As the three strolled deeper into the jungle, Simba commented that he was starving, and Timon told him that he must eat grubs if he wanted to live with them. Reluctantly, Simba tried a grub but ended up enjoying the experience. Simba grew up in the jungle with Timon and Pumbaa. Oftentimes, he would get into mischief, only for Timon or Pumbaa to save his life. Additionally, he frequently kept Timon up at night. In one such instance, Simba admitted that he had a nightmare, and Timon and Pumbaa invited him to sleep with them. An overjoyed Simba immediately clambered into bed with them. As an infant, Simba was small but compact. His mane pelt was a rich gold, while his muzzle, paws, and underbelly were cream. His eyes were black with yellow sclerae, and framed by bicolored eye rims. While the upper shades were darker in color, the lower shades were lighter in color. He had a half-grown brown stump for a tail, and the beginnings of head tuft. His nose was bright pink, and he had thin black eyebrows. Once a cub, Simba retained his coloring, but gained dark brown ear rims, light brown inner ears, elbow tufts, and whiskers. Most of his distinguishing features from his infancy grew more noticeable. His head tuft became longer and more tousled, his eyebrows grew thicker, and his tail tuft lengthened. Additionally, his eyes took on a more reddish-brown hue. Due to his increase in age, Simba became taller, larger, and more compact. He was slightly bigger than his friend Nala, who was the same age. As a cub, Simba was mischievous and playful, with endless energy. He loved to get into scrapes with his best friend Nala and was often drawn to forbidden locations such as the elephant graveyard. He frequently boasted about his own fearlessness and deliberately put himself in harm's way so he could prove his bravery to himself, his family, and his friends. His curiosity often led him into trouble, something Nala commented upon into their adult years. Additionally, Simba was quite proud and arrogant. He enjoyed bragging about his role as the future king of Pride Rock and used his title to push others around, most notably Zazu. He did not take into account a king's duty to his subjects, but rather saw the title as a means of getting whatever he wanted. However, with some instruction from Mufasa, he came to understand that kings are not about getting one's way all the time, and they should only be brave when the situation demanded it. After Mufasa's death during the incident at the stampede, Simba had a lot of mixed feelings. He felt hurt, traumatized, guilty, and depressed. He frequently squashed down his feelings by adopting an upbeat Hakuna Matata attitude and burying all the memories of his past life. Simba is a fictional character in Disney's The Lion King franchise. First appearing as a cub in The Lion King from '94, the character flees his homeland when his father, Mufasa, is murdered by his treacherous Uncle Scar, who manipulates Simba into believing that he is responsible. Several years later, Simba returns home as an adult to reconcile his childhood trauma, confront Scar, and reclaim his birthright as the king of the Pride Lands. He subsequently appears in the sequels The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, and The Lion King 1.5. Created by screenwriters Irene Menchie, Jonathan Roberts, and Linda Wolverton, Simba underwent several changes as the film's story was revised, including making him a more sympathetic character and establishing his familial relation to Scar. Although conceived as an original character, Simba was inspired by Moses and Joseph from the Bible, as well as the title character from William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Despite sharing similarities with the title character from the anime television series Kimba the White Lion, Disney maintains that Simba was not inspired by Kimba. Mark Henn and Ruben A. Aquino were supervising animators for the cub and adult Simba, respectively, with both animators researching live lions and drawing inspiration from the character's voice actors. Simba was originally voiced by actors Jonathan Taylor Thomas as a cub and as an adult by Matthew Broderick, respectively. Various actors have voiced the character in sequels, spin-offs, and related media. Simba has received a mixed reception from film critics, some of whom praised his design but found him uninteresting as a main character. However, several publications have ranked Simba among Disney's most iconic characters and consider him to be one of the most famous lions in popular culture. The character's likeness has been used in several tie-in products, including merchandise, television series, and video games. In 1997, The Lion King actors Scott Irby Rainier and Jason Reyes originated the role on Broadway. In 2019, Donald Glover and J.D. McCrary voiced the character in a photorealistic CGI remake of the film. Simba first appears in The Lion King as a cub, the son of King Mufasa and Queen Sarabi. As Mufasa's heir, Simba is destined to become the next king of the Pride Lands. However, Simba's jealous Uncle Scar plots against him in order to seize the throne for himself, betraying and killing Mufasa after he rescues Simba from a wildebeest stampede, and then deceiving Simba into believing that he is responsible for Mufasa's death. Crippled with guilt, Simba flees to the jungle where he befriends Timon and Pumbaa, a meerkat and warthog, who raise him and teach him to live the carefree lifestyle. But for some reason, Simba hadn't noticed that he continuously struggles to ignore his past just for close attention. Development. The Lion King was conceived in 1988. Although considered to be an original story that follows a young lion, Simba, becoming an adult and learning to take responsibility for his actions, the film's creators drew inspiration for the character from various sources, namely the several coming-of-age stories and biblical figures Moses and Joseph. The film underwent several title changes, one of the earliest of which was King of the Jungle. According to producer Don Hahn, this title was intended to serve as an allegory about Simba needing to survive and grow up in both a literal and metaphorical jungle. However, they renamed it The Lion King upon realizing lions don't live in jungles, and wanting to shift focus to a simpler story about a lion becoming king. Some filmmakers nicknamed the film Bambi in Africa due to the similarities between The Lion King and Disney's own Bambi. The name Simba is the Swahili word for lion. Unlike Disney's three previous romantic films, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, The Lion King focuses on Simba's relationship with his father. In April 1992, the filmmakers hosted a brainstorming session in which much of the film, including Simba's personality, was rewritten. Story supervisor Brenda Chapman realized that they had written a proud, unlikable character. Originally, Simba was intended to remain with his pride after Mufasa's death, until this was revised to make him a more sympathetic character. Additionally, one of the earliest iterations of Scar was a rogue lion unrelated to Simba, whereas Simba was meant to be raised by Scar in another version. According to Disney's theatrical group president Tom Shoemaker, Scar was planned to kill Simba and Mufasa at the same time, only for the other characters to mistake him for saving Simba from the stampede. Instead of meeting Timon and Pumbaa, this version of Simba would have grown up a slacker under Scar's reign, making him easier to overthrow. A short scene depicting a young Simba wandering the desert before meeting Timon and Pumbaa was also cut. Screenwriter Linda Wolverton, one of the writers credited with creating the character, joined the film to revise its screenplay, which included providing Simba with a stronger adversary by changing the rogue lion into Simba's uncle. She felt the change contributed more Shakespearean elements to the story. The character has often been compared to Prince Hamlet from William Shakespeare's tragedy Hamlet. In an earlier version of the script, Simba was meant to lose his final fight to Scar, being thrown from Pride Rock before his uncle ultimately dies in a fire. Nala's younger brother, Mitu, who Simba was to have rescued from a stampede, was also written out of the film, as well as a trio of Simba's childhood friends. For a while, the story team struggled to come up with a convincing reason as to why Simba would believe he was responsible for Mufasa's death without killing him. Story artist Chris Sanders explained that the key to this was eventually accepting that a child in an extremely emotional state would simply believe what their uncle told them. Addressing online speculation that Simba and Nala could potentially be related, since Scar and Mufasa were the only adult male lions identified in the film, Wolverton acknowledged that, although it is possible, she had never written Nala and Simba as cousins or siblings. Although Wolverton admitted that songs such as Hakuna Matata were non-essential to the plot and arrived later during the writing process, she confirmed that it helps demonstrate Simba during his lost boy phase. Some of Disney's marketing team doubted Simba's marketability, since most of Disney's lead characters at the time were female or princesses. Disney auditioned dozens of child actors for the role of young Simba, searching for an actor who could embody a scrappy young kid. Actor Jonathan Taylor Thomas was cast as the speaking voice of young Simba. He will be known as JTT from here on out. He was 12 years old at the time. JTT did not alter his voice for the character, but simply spoke with a real kid spirit, since Simba had been described to him by the film's directors as energetically cocky. JTT recorded his lines in hour-long sessions over the course of a year and a half. Because he was working by himself, he improvised much of what other characters were supposed to be saying to his character due to the lack of other actors on set. Due to his busy schedule, JTT recorded some of his dialogue on the Home Improvement set, the sitcom in which he was starring at the time, since both productions were filmed on Disney's Burbank lot. His recording sessions were video recorded, which animators used to incorporate some of JTT's expressions and mannerisms into their drawings, namely the actor's sly smile. His appearance and personality served as creative inspiration for supervising animator Mark Henn in particular. The actor found Simba's curiosity similar to his own. He also likened Simba to his Home Improvement character, Randy Taylor, describing both as curious, intuitive, confident, and quick-witted. Han recalled roughing JTT up during certain recording sessions when his character was intended to sound active or out of breath, in order to deliver a convincing performance. Toto lead singer Joseph Williams and actor Jason Weaver provided the singing voices of adult and young Simba, respectively. Williams was originally hired to record all of Aladdin's vocals. However, Aladdin's songwriters preferred a more theatrical voice over Williams's and ultimately replaced him with actor Brad Kane. Several months later, Disney's music supervisor Chris Montan invited Williams back to record some demos, which ultimately became the song used in The Lion King. Although Williams speculated that he would be replaced similar to Aladdin, all of his vocals were retained in the final film. The role of Simba's supervising animator was divided between Wherein I and Mark Henn, the former of whom was the first animator hired for The Lion King. Henn animated Simba's scenes from the beginning of the film until approximately the Hakuna Matata sequence, including Simba's first appearance as an adult toward the end of the musical number. Before The Lion King, his experience as a supervising animator was limited to predominantly female characters, having previously worked on Ariel from The Little Mermaid, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and Jasmine from Aladdin. He initially campaigned heavily to animate the film's villain, Scar, because he wanted to do something different from the princesses he had become known for. But Han convinced him to work on Simba due to his experience with main characters. Han reminded Henn that the success of the entire film hinges on Simba's design, since he is considered the most important character in The Lion King, and the animator found it a welcome departure from leading ladies nonetheless. Aside from Andreas Deja, who ultimately animated Scar, Henn was the most tenured animator on The Lion King, whose roster mostly consisted of newer or first-time animators. Simba proved to be a challenge because Henn was tasked with creating an animated character who would both appear and behave like a real lion cub for the first time. To achieve believability, Henn visited zoos, studied live lion cubs that were loaned to the studio for research, and consulted with wildlife professionals. Henn maintained that animators cannot simply use their cats as reference models due to their difference in anatomies. Recalling their efforts to make his character as realistic as possible, Henn said that, unlike domestic cats, lion cubs have a power underlying that seemingly soft exterior. He was also responsible for making sure Simba's appearance remained consistent between himself, the directors, and other animators. When it came to animating the "I Just Can't Wait to Be King" musical sequence, Henn insisted that Simba remain on all fours, despite the character exhibiting human characteristics by dancing. The animators would often observe the film's actors' recording sessions, using their mannerisms as visual reference, with JTT proving particularly influential on Simba's design and personality. Henn described his version of the character as a young, cocky, inexperienced cub who had yet to mature, which he hoped would remind viewers of their younger selves. Compared to adult Simba, young Simba is looser and less physically assured, which allowed Henn to draw him a little more awkward, his feet a little bigger, that they could be more floppier than when he was an adult. Although Henn and Aquino did not spend much time discussing the character's design with each other, Both artists referenced live lions and received input from the same research team to determine how Simba would look and behave. Catherine Hinman of Orlando Sentinel observed that the animator's extensive research resulted in a lion cub who moves like his aristocratic cousins on the savannah, but acts like the kid down on the street. Tom Bancroft, an animator who worked on Simba under Hen, described his supervisor as the fastest animator at Disney at the time, making it difficult for the other animators to acquire their own scenes to animate, as Hen would typically do them himself. According to the Academy of Art University, Hen's work on Simba further cemented his place in animation history. Disney's The Lion King is a 1994 platform game based on Disney's 1994 animated film of the same name. It was originally developed by Westwood Studios and published by Virgin Interactive Entertainment for the Super NES and Sega Genesis, and was ported to the MS-DOS, Amiga, Game Gear, Master System, and NES. The Amiga, Master System, and NES versions were only released in the PAL region, however. The game follows Simba's journey from a young cub to the battle with his Uncle Scar as an adult. Gameplay. The Lion King is a side-scrolling platformer where players control the protagonist, Simba, in the events of the film, going through both child and adult forms as the game progresses. In the first half of the game, players control Simba as a cub who mainly defeats enemies by jumping on them. Simba's roar consumes a replenishable meter and can be used to stun enemies or solve puzzles. In the second half of the game, Simba becomes an adult and gains access to various combat moves such as scratching, mauling, and throws. Simba starts the game with a certain number of lives depending on the difficulty setting, which are lost if he runs out of health, falls into a bottomless pit, or a lake of water or lava, or is hit by a rolling boulder or falling stalactites. Passing through checkpoints throughout the level allows Simba to restart from that point when he loses a life. The game ends prematurely when the player loses all of their lives. If the players have any continues left, collected via the Circle of Life icon on any stage, they can restart from the beginning of the stage they got a game over with. Otherwise, it's back to the title screen and starting over from the beginning. The player can collect various types of bugs. Some bugs restore Simba's health. Other rarer bugs can increase both the health and roar meters for the remainder of the game, and black spiders will damage Simba. By finding certain bugs hidden in specific levels, the player enters bonus stages as Timon and Pumbaa to earn extra lives and continues. In Pumbaa's stages, he collects falling bugs and items until either one hits the bottom of the screen or he eats a bad bug. In Timon's stages, he hunts for bugs within a time limit while avoiding spiders. Every 10 bugs Timon eats will net the player extra lives, continues, or rarely some health or roar extension bugs. Development. The sprites and backgrounds were drawn by Disney animators at Walt Disney Feature Animation, and the music was adapted from songs and orchestrations on the film's soundtrack. Game designer Lewis Castle revealed that 2 levels, Hakuna Matata and Be Prepared, were adapted from scenes which were cut from the final movie. The game's development started in January of '94 and finished in July. Near the end of development, the monkey puzzle on the second level, Can't Wait to Be King, was expanded and made more difficult to meet Disney's playtime criteria to fight game rentals. At the time, as time constraints made it impossible to add any more levels. An Amiga 1200 version was developed with assembly language in 2 months by Dave Simmons, who was willing to take on the conversion if he received the Genesis source code. He had assumed the game to be programmed in 68,000 assembly, and the Amiga and Genesis share the same Motorola CPU family, but he found it had been written in C, a language he was totally unfamiliar with. Westwood Studios developed the game for SNES and Genesis. Other conversions were outsourced to different studios. East Point Software ported it to MS-DOS, adding enhanced sound effects and music. The Sega Master System and Game Gear versions were developed by Cyrox Developments, and the NES and Game Boy versions were developed by Dark Technologies. The 1995 European NES version was that console's last release in all regions. The game had a marketing budget of $8 million from a total budget of $20 million. Reception. The Super NES version of Lion King The Super NES version of The Lion King had 1.27 million copies sold in the US. More than 200,000 copies of the MS-DOS version were sold. In the UK, it was the top-selling Sega Master System game in November of '94. In the US, it was the top-selling Game Gear game in December of '94. In 2002, Westwood's Lewis Castle remarked that roughly 4.5 million copies of The Lion King were sold in total. GamePro reviewed the SNES version, commenting on outstanding graphics and voices, but repetitive, tedious gameplay that was too daunting for beginning players and too annoying for experienced ones. They particularly noted the imprecise controls and highly uneven difficulty, though they said the movie-quality graphics, animations, and sounds were good enough to make the game worth playing regardless of the gameplay. They similarly remarked of the Genesis version, The Lion King looks good and sounds great, but the gameplay needs a little more fine-tuning. The 4 reviewers of Electronic Gaming Monthly praised the Game Gear version as having graphics equal to and controls vastly improved over the SNES and Genesis versions. GamePro wrote that the graphics were not as good as those of the SNES and Genesis, but agreed that they were exceptional by Game Gear standards, and praised its much more gradual difficulty slope than the earlier versions. Next Generation rated the SNES version 4 stars out of 5 and stated that even though the game is much harder than Aladdin, it's never unfair or frustrating. In 2014, game director Lewis Castle revealed that the reason why the game was made difficult, especially on level 2, was due to pressure from Disney so that people would not be able to complete it during the rental periods at Blockbusters. He has since apologized for this. Entertainment Weekly gave the Super NES version an A and the Genesis version a B, and wrote, "Controlling Simba while he's a playful bundle of fur is one thing. Putting him through his paces as a full-maned adult is quite another. When the grown-up Simba gives a blood-curdling roar and mauls snarling hyenas, the interaction is so well observed it's like watching a PBS nature documentary. The sense of power it gives you is exhilarating, and by the time Simba takes his climactic heavyweight stand against his evil Uncle Scar, this Lion King has turned into a Wild Kingdom variant of Street Fighter II. Superplay gave the Super NES version an overall score of 82/100, praising its graphics and sound as almost film-like quality, and stating a very high-quality platformer game with little in the way of innovation. As I mentioned in my Palace of Agrabah build, the top 5 games I played growing up were Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 3, The Legend of Zelda, Disney's Aladdin, and Disney's The Lion King. I have heard many people complain about how impossible this game is, especially for the Genesis, but the only part my siblings and I found enraging was trying to figure out how to beat the final 2 levels, the Mystery Cave Path and how to beat Scar. You could hit Scar indefinitely, but if you didn't pull off the flip maneuver in the right way, the game wouldn't end. Once we figured out this secret, it was just a matter of how quickly you could get Scar into position. I really like the details in this young Simba Lego set. The designers really captured the shape of Simba's face and body. Total build time, 3 hours, 15 minutes, 23 seconds. Which means that you could watch almost 9 full episodes of The Lion King's Timon and Pumbaa series. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, ring that bell, all the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.